Okay, so here's the John Deere no-till unit. This is a 90 series unit. This is a 1990 CCS drill. If we ever get a 1590 15-foot drill, it'll be the same exact setup. This is very similar to the 1560, which is our 15-foot drill. We also have a 750, which was the original style drill that's sitting out there on the fence row there. So a little bit different than this setup. Okay. To start with, the first thing that enters the ground is the opening disc. It's a single blade right here. Okay, you always want to make sure the blade is good and tight, no side-to-side play, and it spins freely, and it's good and tight. Okay, that's the first thing that enters the ground, and it cuts a single slot. A lot of drills are double disc openers, like the Great Plains style. Our planter is a double disc opener. This is a single disc opener. We sold our Great Plains last year, so we don't have that anymore, but we do have a double disc opener on the planter. Next, you have these tubes coming from the Central Commodity Box, CCS, Central Commodity System. I think that's what CCS stands for. But there's a big fan that blows the seed through these hoses into the seed tube, which is this. All right, that seed tube enters the seed boot, which you can see here, and you can probably see it on this, looking from this way on this other unit. Maybe. Well, you can see it, but I have to point it out. So get it in right here, you can see it better. Right here, where my finger is. Okay, so this right here is the seed boot. The seed blows through this hole right here, where I'm sticking my finger. All right, and there's a wear point here on these boots. As the discs wear, the boot starts wearing. So when the disc is worn out, when this bevel is gone right here, this has about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch bevel left. Once that bevel's gone, we need to replace the discs so the boot doesn't wear. These are extended wear boots, which are nice. This drill has about 25,000 acres on it, and they have not replaced the boots on it yet, which is nice. But those extended wear boots cost twice as much. They're about $40, $50 a piece. Okay, this little blue tab is called the seed tab. What it does is it keeps the seed, once it blows out of here, from bouncing out of the furrow created by the single disc opener disc. After that, this press wheel follows behind, and this press wheel will ride a little bit further behind the tab, and it serves to press the seed down in the soil into the furrow. And that gets good soil to seed contact. Next, you have the closing wheel here. That closes the furrow created by the single disc opener and covers the seed up. Finally, you have the gauge wheel shown here. It serves two purposes. The first purpose is to get the seed to the proper depth. It's adjusted right here. There is a adjustment arm. You raise the tire up to plant it deeper. You might have to help it along, and you might have to hit it with a hammer. And you lower it, plant it shallower. You pick it up and then put it down in those slots. You can see these slots. You can turn this like this. It's adjustable at 1/4 inch increments. So right now we're planting about 1 inch deep. The shallowest you can get is maybe 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. But that's really hard. This is not good for planting shallow. It's better for like 1 inch to 2 inches. Okay, so that's the adjustment on the gauge wheel. So on this drill in the 1560, primary grease point is down here. This drill is having a hard time taking grease in these, because I don't know if the prior owner greased it as much as I would like them to. What that grease point does is allows you to move this wheel up and down. If they would have kept it greased, it would be really, really easy. And if you work these things back and forth, it doesn't do any good to grease it and then leave it stuck in the same spot, because that grease isn't working around that bushing. Changing this stuff out and redoing this is a royal pain. I mean, a royal pain, because you have to take the unit off. And it's just not easy. So it's best to try to keep them greased. We tried forcing some penetrating oil in there last year with some limited success. I'm hoping this year we can get it better. They also did an upgrade on this drill. There's a grease point here for the closing wheel. This closing wheel has to have a bushing here. That grease point will probably keep those bushings from going out. They also put a grease point here in the press wheel arm. This is the press wheel arm here. I can't reach these grease points because they put the grease points in a funny spot, so I'm not going to worry about it. those bushings don't go out very often. One thing that does wear is right here on the unit itself. The unit itself is cast steel or cast iron. There's 3 holes adjusting the boot depth. They're usually set in the middle hole. Those holes will waller out, and the boot will become floppy or sloppy. And there's some aftermarket upgrade kits that we can use to fix that. If you look down here, you see this bolt. Look down here in the boot, right here at this angle. Okay, yeah, you see that? Okay, inside below that bolt is a spring shaped like a U, like my fingers are right now. And that spring keeps the boot snug against the disc. And you want that. That boot has to be snug up against the disc, because otherwise you're not going to put your seat in the furrow created by the disc. One other thing about the gauge wheels that I forgot to mention. The first thing was they adjust the depth of the seat. They also, see this? It's really snug up against this disc. It cleans the discs of any mud or anything that builds up. So if you're going through like a wet spot, the mud will cling to this and this will scrape it off. If it's really, really muddy outside, you just need to stop, because it's not going to work. And these things back here behind, they plug up with mud, and the gauge wheels will entirely stop spinning. You have to come out here with a pressure washer and pressure wash them all out, which is not fun. And you have to wait for it to dry out. These springs, this heavy coil spring, keeps the whole unit down in the ground. The way this gang works is when you lower the unit, this gang pivots right here and lowers this into the ground. This is active down pressure. So your hydraulics need to be set on the motor setting. When you push the hydraulics forward, you're going to leave it in the detent setting, which is forward but not all the way to float, and it's going to run constantly. What that constant down pressure does, as you're going through terrain, it's not always level like this. As this unit comes through this low spot, the down pressure will force that unit back down into this low spot, and then once you get back over to this higher spot, it'll pick back up. So it's keeping a constant down pressure on this disc, so that even in low spots, it'll push down, and when it gets to higher spots, it'll lift up. But the seating depth will be the same. Whereas if you had your hydraulics set, you lowered it down, and then you put it into neutral, the planing depth would vary, going over various types of terrain as you're planting. This is a 2-gang drill, like all our drills, on 7.5-inch spacings. On this drill, you can control the which gang goes up and which one goes down with these valves. I believe, I could be wrong, if both of them are open, both gangs will go down. If this one is open, only the back gang will go down, I think. You just have to experiment with it. I can't remember. So if you leave this one closed and this one open, only the back one will go down for 15-inch spacing. You cannot lower just the front gang and leave the back one up. That doesn't work like that. You can only lower the back gang by itself or both gangs at the same time. So that's how you get your 15-inch spacing. Back here you see a pressure gauge. That is your atmosphere or inches of water pressure for the air fan. You want it over 10 but less than 20. And it's hard to see, so you just about have to come out of the tractor. You want to have, when you're measuring the gauge, you want to have the gangs down, and you want your tractor running at running RPM, so probably about 1800 RPMs. Now it'll get you the right pressure. You want it between probably about 15 to 18 PSI or whatever that is. That's what you're shooting for. All right, let's go back here to the, let's go over here to the front because we're already here. We got 3 different hydraulics going on here. This is hydraulics switch number 1. This is the raise and lower of the gang, both gangs. It's set on regular cylinder setting. This smaller hose, which is green, controls the wings. So raise and lowers the 2 wings. The third set is the fan. The fan also has a dump, which goes, where is the dump? Dump here. That prevents it from stopping the fan abruptly and having it come to a stop and blowing seals out. This one right here. So it's kind of a safety mechanism. It also keeps your oil from heating up too much, like I described earlier. There's 2 sets of electronics. The first set here, which we're going to fix to replace, controls the blockage sensors. So when you have a blockage, it'll beep at you and tell you that a row is blocked, and it'll tell you which row. This cable goes back to the sensors inside the seed box to tell you if the seed box is running low on seed. We'll also control this seeding rate adjustment, which you can do from inside the cab. There's a push button that will engage this, which will adjust your seeding rate. Also, it will control 2 clutches on either wing, so you can shut the wings off. You can shut the left side off or the right side, and there's a clutch. Oh, where's the clutch on you? I can find them. Here's one. This right here is a clutch pack here. So when that clutch is disengaged, it'll stop this from spinning, and those the seed won't put out on this side of the drill. So 15 feet over here, it won't put out. And on the left side, there's another clutch, which I cannot find for the life of me. It's basically the same thing. It'll stop the left-hand side. Sometimes when you use that clutch, it'll stick and it won't engage. Once you hit the button, you have to come back here and tap that box to get it to engage. And it might take you a few trips going in and out of the tractor to do that. Now, if you need to adjust your seeding rate, but you're not inside the tractor and you don't have someone here telling you where to set it, this is pretty simple. There is oh gosh, where are you here? Let's see how we do this. This right here, isn't it? Oh man, now I have to think about it a little bit. Yeah, you use that, but you have to disengage this motor here. This little motor. This little motor's engaged right now. Here it is, right here. Okay. See this little spring right here? Do that. You can disengage that motor and do it manually. You see the adjustment needle here? Right here's the adjustment needle. You can adjust it manually like that, but you have to hold that thing down. You don't want to crank on this. This is called, I guess you'd probably call this an actuator that spins this gear in here. So you don't want to mess with that actuator and mess it up because it's probably several $100s. These are some sprockets. It's currently set on the small sprocket, but there's also a large sprocket. When you start putting out higher rates of seed and fertilized mixtures, you'll switch over to the large sprocket. And this idler sprocket here, you can pull up to loosen up the chain. And you can shift, let's see here, how do you do this? There's a spacer here. You take the spacer out, you shift both sprockets over, stick it behind the big one, and you can put the chain on the big sprocket. That's how you do that. So this little spacer here comes out. You just kind of break it apart with your thumb, like this. And you can shift both sprockets over, like that. Stuff it behind the big sprocket, and then move this chain on the big sprocket. Make sense? Easy enough. It's pretty easy. You can do it without any tools if you're good. If you're not good, you might have to use some tools, which is probably usually the case with us. Okay. Don't go through any gates that are wider than your drill because you'll ruin these, which has already happened. Okay, so this is the drive wheel here. When this thing is spinning, it drives the chain. You can see it here. When the drill's lowered on the ground, this drives. You can go up to the front to the meters and you can see those meters spin right here. Go ahead and come over here and underneath this flap, stand right there. There's a plastic rubber flap right here. Right here. And flip that up, and I'm gonna spin that wheel so you can see those meters turning. Go and hold it up while I can film there. See them turning? Are they spinning? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what meters the seed out. Okay? That's called the venturi. That little bank of 12 meters where those white hoses tie into. Those white hoses are called primaries. Alright? So it dumps the seed into the primary. The primaries all are the same length. Every hose, even the ones closest to the venturi, have to be the same length as the one way out here because otherwise the pressure would get affected and the seed wouldn't go out evenly. So you have to have the same length hose across all the units. So if they're 12 feet long, they're 12 feet long for every single one, every single run. Sometimes that venturi gets plugged. Unplug it, you got a little tool here. You want your fan running when you do this. And you lift up the flap that you just did, and you'll see them plugged, and you just kind of wedge this down in there and kind of bang it until that seed frees up, and that'll free up the seed. You'll come back here to check that when your alarm starts going off on your monitor. Hopefully the alarm works. This summer it did not work. I had to come back here every few acres to check and see if I was plugged, which was a pain. This is the fan here. All right, now we're getting into some cool stuff. This thing is extremely loud. Very, very loud. So I advise wearing hearing protection when you're back here, especially when you're checking the units to see if they're putting out seed. You'll be turning this while this fan's running, and it's loud. So keep that in mind. You can see the bypass valve. This goes to the dump of the tractor, like I was describing. All right, here you have a cool package that came with this drill. It's for an auger to load this commodity box. Before you switch to auger, which is pulling this out, you need to stop the fan. To stop the fan, you put the switch on float and let it gradually come to a stop. Do not put the fan in neutral, because you'll blow the seal inside of here and it's going to be expensive. Always put the fan on float so it coasts to a stop. Once it coasts to a stop, you come back here, pull this out, you can plug your auger in, and then you can go run your hydraulics again and you can fill up your seed box. And same process, float the auger, push this back in, unplug your hoses, cover this up so they don't get dirty. Always cover them up so you don't have to sit there and clean all the time. And that's how you use the auger. You can climb up to the seed box and open it up. Two little rubber handles. See these little black boxes here? These are your seed level sensors. They'll tell you when the tank starts getting low. If you're like in soybeans, you might have 5 acres left. If you're in oats, you might have 1 or 2 acres left because you're having a higher seeding rate. This little screen is nice. I advise running your seed through this screen so you don't have any plugs that'll plug up your venturi or your seed tubes. You just close this. There you go there. Let's go look at the blockage sensors. There you go. These are the blockage sensors right here. So if you have a blockage between here and the venturi, it'll let you know. However, if your hose comes off here and it's flowing seed out this way, it's not going to tell you that. So you need to keep an eye on these hoses coming out from the blockage sensor to make sure they're not undone. I think there was one undone. Did you see it?
Yeah, I put it back together.
Oh, you already put it back together? Did you tighten it up? Okay. Yeah, so that's what these hose clamps are for. And you can see how the sensors plug in. It's a 3-wire weatherproof plug. We should be getting a new monitor system with all new of these. You plug into these here shortly. Make sure you plug it in all the way. Make sure it clicks. Okay. Sometimes you'll have a plug here in these in here. Take this apart. There's some screws. I think this is like an 8mm here underneath. You can kind of take that apart a little bit and see if there's a blockage. We're going to try to do a better job of screening our fertilizer so we don't have big chunks of fertilizer this year, so that we can run without a bunch of plugs. In an ideal world, we'll run without having any plugs in the day. Seldom does it work like that. You have to get out and fix the plugs, because if you have a plug meter, that's a row of seed that's not getting planted. That's a row of seed that doesn't get harvested. But we're still spending the same amount of inputs. So you want to make sure the seed gets in the ground and gets planted so we can get a good stand. day, you can cover about 120 acres with this drill. So you have a choice. You can plant 120 acres really good, and make sure you have a good stand, or you can plant 120 acres very poorly, have a poor stand, and make a poor profit. So always make sure, this is the most important step of farming, is getting the seed in the ground, getting a good stand, having straight rows, even distribution between the rows so you don't have a whole bunch of open blank areas. So that's all very important. So the grease points on this drill, let's go over some maintenance. Let's go ahead and kill the video and we'll start a new one.